I almost ignored the late night ping on my phone until I saw the number 5,589 next to XRP, and I kind of felt my pulse leap. Now that's a tiny 5-digit figure, might actually explain why institutional giants just flew open a brand new door in crypto, and why I spent the next 48 hours frantically moving money around. Now it might shock you, but I am not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile, and you could lose all the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a financial professional. Your investments are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses. And this video, it's for entertainment and educational purposes only. Okay, so picture me, 1 AM, laptop aglow, coffee gone cold, and a friend DMs a cryptic kind of tweet from a community watchdog, 𝗗𝗶𝘀𝗰𝗋. Now it says May 19th, get 5,589 XRP before the floodgates open. No chart, no thread, just that. Now, I've chased plenty of wild kind of eyed crypto kind of prophecies since 2017, but something about that precision, the exact 5,589, it just wouldn't let me sleep. So I started digging, and 𝗗𝗶𝘀𝗰𝗋 wasn't babbling just moon boy hype. He was actually triangulating a real calendar event, the Chicago Mercantile, Exchange. Yeah, that CME, where suits kind of hedge trillions in corn and crude. Now that was about to list XRP futures. Now you think futures first, ETFs later. We've seen that movie before with Bitcoin, Ethereum, and even Solana. Now my inner skeptic kind of perked up here. I said, okay, but why 5,589? So we can cue a bit of a flashback to my first ever kind of bull run bruise, if you will. I once scraped together 2,000 XRP at 40-something cents. Patted myself on the back and sold at $3, feeling like Warren Buffett's cooler cousin. Then the 2021 rally kind of left me staring at a rearview mirror full of missed zeros. So since then, or ever since then, I should say, I've kept a kind of mental checklist of signals that kind of precede kind of big league adoption, if you will, and regulated futures, liquidity-hungry institutions, and mainstream headlines that kind of make your kind of barber ask about what's that Ripple coin? And well, the CME ticker, it hit every single box. But let's get back to the magic number, right? Turns out that 5,589 isn't just numerology, right? It's actually practical math, at least apparently. The price kind of flashing on the screen last night was about, $2 and some change. Grabbing that kind of stack would now run you roughly around $12,000. The cost of a used Honda Civic with questionable mileage then. Manageable? Yeah, quite meaningful. So it's a bag big enough to matter if XRP goes parabolic, but small enough that regular folks aren't choosing between crypto and rent. And so I do what I always do. I scribble upside down napkin math. Suppose the kind of WisdomTree spot ETF, working, through the kind of SEC kind of pipelines finally slides home, and XRP merely follows Bitcoin's post-ETF playbook, while 30% of BTC's inflows, conservative by crypto standards, while the analysts at the Crypto Basics kind of calculate that bump's price towards $22. So suddenly your humble 5,589 XRP, it could theoretically explode from 12 grand to a hair under 123,000. So that's kind of new Audi, in case you're kind of wondering. Close the laptop? No. We slide deeper, right? Crypto YouTuber, Crypto Minder's April thesis kind of screams $50 XRP and full-blown liquidity super cycle. It's a bit of a mouthful, really, but the plug-in, the kind of same stack, and you're kind of sitting at $279,000. Now we're kind of talking midlife crisis Porsche money, right? push the throttle to Barry C's moonshot and moon math of $100 and 5,589 XRP, claims a surreal $558,900, a cool $500,000 from a Honda Civic sized punt. All hypothetical, of course. And so it all kind of sounds dreamy, right? And here's the glittery reality then, right? Futures listings, they don't guarantee windfalls. In fact, they don't guarantee anything. You got to remember Litecoin futures on CME, right? The price initially doubled and then sank like a stone while paper hands blamed the halving. But, history does rhyme and institutional doors rarely swing shut once they're actually pried open. So the real obstacle then isn't whether Wall Street eventually blesses spot XRP ETFs, it's actually whether everyday investors freeze in analysis paralysis before the flows hit. Now, I kind of felt that fear crawling up my spine May 18th, hovering over the buy button, questioning my sanity. And that's the kind of problem that our community wrestles with. How to commit before the headline euphoria, not after. So what do? I went hunting for confirmation outside the Twitter bubble. Now, Glassnode's futures open interest chart, up and to the right since the CME day one. So, derivatives research firm, Levitas, reported a 38% surge in institutional kind of block trades on XRP contracts within the first week. Even Bloomberg, right, the ultimate suit and tie thermometer, if you will, ran a headline: CME opens floodgates for Ripple's token. So when the legacy press writes Ripple token, right, instead of, controversial altcoin, that sentiment is tilting. And yet still, numbers alone can't drown the little voice whispering. What if this is another bull trap? And that's why I lean on community brainpower. Now, our free educational Discord server, there's a link for that down below, is basically an always awake think tank where newbies and quants dissect every on-chain blip. So why don't you just jump in? It costs you absolutely zero and saves you from the echo chamber of just doom scrolling. Okay, so let's talk about acquiring such a bag, right? Now, fees that are kind of the silent kind of vampire of crypto accumulation, right? And I used to kind of bounce across a half a dozen, sketchy different exchanges, chasing half-a-cent spreads until I discovered Blofin. So here's a quick disclosure, right? The Blofin link in the description down below is an affiliate link, which means that if you end up signing up and trading, the channel here earns a small kickback at no extra cost to yourself. Now, it keeps the lights on and it keeps my coffee cup full during 1 a.m. rabbit hole sessions. So if you'd rather not, that's also totally cool. Just mind your fees whether you trade or not. Okay, so let's get back to the story here, right? May 19th arrives. I flip open the CME dashboard, XRP futures contract ticker, XRP or XPR, I should say, green, across the board. And within hours, open interest breaches $50 million. Dwarfing early Ethereum future volume. Now, my group chat kind of exploded at this point, right? Screenshots of positions, celebratory memes of Ripple's logo, riding rocket ships, you name it, right? Now, I'm kind of grinning like a kid at a carnival, but I'm also, scanning order books, watching for whale footprints, because like everything, nothing is guaranteed. What goes up does sometimes come back down. And then, of course, we have the plot twist. The SEC drops a kind of perpetual kind of delay on, at least delay notice on the WisdomTree ETF, right? Twitter, of course, doom, kind of profits, kind of shriek, rug pull, and XRP dips 8%, right? And so you can kind of see here how my DMs, they kind of pile up, like, should I bail? And, you could feel the kind of climax building, like the top click on a roller coaster at this point. And that night, I had to reread the Bitcoin ETF timeline, 12 separate delays before approval, right? Ethereum, it was the same pattern. And so markets, they yawned through the paperwork, then kind of detonated on the kind of final signature, if you will. And the lesson here is quite simple. Regulators, they love the kind of choreographed uncertainty, right? It's kind of like the the uncertainty, yet it's still predictable at the same time. So at this point, I doubled down on research instead of kind of rage selling like so many others, right? I pulled up, thermal stats, and Bitcoin ETFs kind of pulled in $38 billion within 3 months. So even a kind of stingy 10% siphon into an eventual XRP fund kind of implies that billions in fresh demand could actually flow into XRP. Hypothetical, of course. But you've got to remember that total XRP market cap, it hovers around $120 billion. So incremental billions shift price like a stiff breeze on a sailboat. I think there's actually a multiplier here where we see capital inflows versus market cap. So 1 billion in actually represents 600 billion on market cap. It's quite vast, right? Even if we scale that back to 1 billion equals 100 billion on market cap, you can kind of get a bit of a scale here as to potentially what is going on. But of course, these are just stats that are on chain and can be seen. Just go ahead and do some research. Meanwhile, of course, XRP's daily settlement volume on RippleNet keeps chugging, right? The Bank of International Settlement noted in a March paper that cross-border payment pilots using XRP, it actually slashed remittance friction by over 70%, and that's published paper. Now that's the utility piece too many kind of spectators ignore while debating candlesticks on, TradingView. So when we get utility plus regulation plus liquidity, it's kind of the crypto trifecta then. And our 5,589 XRP blueprint sits smack bang in the middle of it. This is not a ticket to the moon, right? It's not a Dogecoin lotto scratcher. Just a sized for humans kind of leverage on the thesis that history rhymes louder with every futures listing. But we should probably ground things here, right? Because there are risks, and there's plenty of them, right? A call could cripple Ripple's US operations. Global liquidity could cease if macro conditions sour. Even success, introduces downside, right? ETFs invite sophisticated hedging that can suppress spot spikes. Now, if you kind of panic at a 20% swing, allocate less. It should be as simple as that. If you're overreacting emotionally, you're overinvesting, at least in my humble opinion. Now, I've of course tracked the emotional side by automating buys, right? And, every kind of minor dip, a limit order catches a new kind of fresh extra coin or so. It's kind of boring, but it is methodical. And yet by the last kind of night, my wallet was finally showing and flashing that oddly specific 5,589 XRP. Kind of feels like crossing a finish line that no one else actually sees just yet. And like I said earlier, right, I am not a financial advisor. So when people ask me, will it 10x? There is absolutely no crystal ball here, right? But owning a slice of an infrastructure bet feels a little bit more sane than maybe preying on a meme coin to go vertical, right? And if the upside scenarios that we've mapped out kind of land anywhere close to a potential base camp, that Honda Civic metaphor from earlier, it kind of morphs into a house down payment without needing a lotto miracle. But of course, it is hypothetical. Now, before we kind of wrap up today, we have got a quick mental checklist, right? You've got CME Futures, they're live and they're liquid. You've got spot ETF applications, they're crawling, but they are consistent. You've got institutional adoption, it's ticking upwards from Santander tests to SBI's on-ramps in Japan. And then you've got community conviction, right? That's stronger than any time since the 2018 kind of winter. We stack all of those catalysts on top to at least of a modest, maybe $12,000 investment, and the risk-reward curve suddenly looks asymmetric, but in a good way. Of course, nothing is guaranteed. Okay, so final thoughts from last night's Discord call then, right? Markets, they are going to punish hesitation more than maybe wrong guesses. But, the folks kind of kicking themselves over missing early Bitcoin weren't necessarily skeptics at the time. They were just maybe indecisive. Whether your target is 5,589 XRP or 50, pick a lane, size responsibly, and just stick the landing. Now, at this point, as we kind of finish off this video, if you want to learn more about this, make sure to join us in our free Discord server via the link that's in the description down below. Hit that like button and subscribe for more. And I hope you've enjoyed this hypothetical rabbit hole that we've been down today.